Welcome to Idea to Investment, the podcast where we dig into the exciting world of entrepreneurship and investment. We tell the stories of tech creators doing innovative work and the investors who back them up. Along the way, unveiling the fascinating journey of an idea to scoring crucial investment, we'll highlight the voices of entrepreneurs, showcasing their grit and creativity while gaining insight from the investors who lead to those dreams. Get ready to be inspired, stay informed, and stay tuned as we explore the awesome collision of ideas and investments. Idea to Investment is sponsored by TD Ferrera Wealth Advisory Group.
My name is Emily Mercy. I am the co-founder and managing director at Goparity. We are an impact investment platform that makes investing transparent and easy for everyone to access.
And yes, my name is Oneil Knight, one of the co-founders of the Afro-Caribbean Business Network and the current executive director. We work with entrepreneurs of African and Caribbean heritage, really to figure out what stage the business is in and help them create a strategy to grow their companies exponentially.
Okay, well, thanks so much for joining us and taking the time to have this conversation. Of course, we always start our episode with the pitch. So Emily, do you want to start by describing what Goparity is in 60 seconds?
Sure. So Goparity is an impact investing platform. And if you're already like, I don't know what that means, don't worry. Impact investing is an investment in an organization or initiative that creates positive, measurable social or environmental good. So Goparity is an impact investment platform, much like Wealthsimple or Robinhood, but we provide investments to Canadian citizens to help them easily invest in community-focused small business projects that do good for people and the planet.
Terrific. Thanks, Emily. And Ryan, let's start with the light bulb moment when you realized that Goparity is the right fit for your funding project.
Yes, the light bulb definitely went off as I was going to other traditional banking outlets and getting a lot of resistance. And even though there's Black entrepreneurship programs, we were part of the SWXVX accelerator that helps with new funds. So we had our impact day and we got to pitch and got to meet Blake from Goparity. And he mentioned, hey, there's an alternative where we can actually crowdfund the lending dollars that you needed. So that was the light bulb moment that it even existed. I didn't know of Goparity, so hearing about it and it being an alternative to the traditional banking that we were really struggling with getting funding from.
So Emily, I'm sure you come across lots of different types of impact projects. So how do you decide which ones to onboard onto the Goparity platform?
Yeah. Great question. We kind of look at two main areas, which is the financial side of things, so the risk, and then, of course, the impact side of things. On the impact side, we look at financing any projects that support the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So a really, really broad range of impact. But for us, we kind of break it down into 5 primary impact areas. So that would be clean energy projects, water and the blue economy, biodiversity preservation or sustainable agriculture, social economy. So that's a project like Ryan's. And then businesses in transition as well, which really opens the door to any type of business that's just doing a project where they're creating some sort of social or environmental impact. We then, if they have impact in that area and we know that they support the goals, we know that we can do an impact assessment on that business. From the financial side, Goparity only finances debt projects. So it's all basically small business loans. And so we need to make sure that for all of these projects, we are providing, it makes sense to provide the debt funding to them. We're providing it at an interest rate that's, aligned with market rates at the time of the assessment, and that we're providing the business of financing that they're going to be able to pay back. So we do an internal risk assessment as well and make sure they're in a position to get the debt financing that they're asking for.
It sounds like a really good match then between the two organizations as it relates to impact. And I can see, Ryan, why your project was selected for the Goparity platform. Now, you mentioned that this is your first time crowdfunding for the project. And so thinking about the adoption of coming onto the Goparity platform, what was one of the most unique features or surprising benefits that you encountered so far in this crowdfunding journey?
Yeah, well, I guess the core way that Goparity works with it being a repayable crowdfunding process. So
Yeah.
talking to like our network, they're used to like GoFundMe's where it's like, oh, they're just kind of donating. So the education piece around like, no, the money that you're putting in is actually an investment that we're going to repay over 4 years at the interest rate. That has been like a shift to say like, oh, okay, you're thinking of more of an investment than just like a fundraiser donation type thing. And we're not a registered charity, so we typically can't do donation type fundraisers anyway. So being able to provide an investment vehicle, and a lot of times our community doesn't really invest in like different projects or stocks or bonds. So this is a smaller, easier way to have their first investment. So now with Goparity, and they do the $50 voucher, so it really reduces the risk for people to get their foot in the door. So I feel like that conversation about how to invest in projects is starting to grow in our community through this project.
What I love about the detail that you just provided, Ryan, is that it's a difference between GoFundMe and what would be a gift to somebody, and not necessarily a registered charitable donation, and that the crowdfunding is about the investment. So it really brings it back to social investment of those folks who are contributing to your project are making investment in the project, and they're not necessarily just giving away cash to something that's really interesting, innovative, and helps to move the needle on the UN SDG goals, but is actually a return on their investment. And so they are both investing with their dollars, but I'm sure also with the curiosity, with their support, with sort of cheerleading in the space. And so I really like how you just explained the difference between going on a GoFundMe platform versus choosing a platform that's related to crowdfunding, that's an investment vehicle where people are invested in a lot of different ways. And it's, that's the kind of statement I might hear from Emily in explaining the difference. And it's clear to me as a project recipient that you are very dialed into the benefits of Goparity to advancing the priorities that you have for your organization. So thanks so much for bringing so much clarity. Is there anything else you wanted to add, or Emily, anything you wanted to add? And otherwise, I've got a couple more questions.
Yeah, I think on that point for me, it's been amazing to work with the ACBN community, especially because they are so supportive and tuned in to the work that's happening within their ecosystem. So it's been a very unique experience. And even we launched with a first webinar, just a learning opportunity about for folks from the Goparity community, for folks from the ACBN community to come together and learn about this opportunity and ask their questions to our leadership. And we had such an amazing turnout and so much engagement from ACBN specifically, and people just really wanting to learn and explore this opportunity and support. So it's been really great to see that sort of feedback and see that people are taking that learning journey. Because for us at Goparity, telling people about the opportunities to invest in these types of projects, there is that first initial barrier because it's a new concept. It's not really like anything that's been done before, other than, I guess, debt-based, or not debt-based, donation-based crowdfunding, where the whole interest rate, the fact that it's an investment, that doesn't exist there. So it's new, and I love the eagerness to learn that I'm seeing from the ACBN community.
I love that now our community is even more vested in the project itself, because before people really didn't know like what ACBN is doing. So this allows us to get the word out about our projects. And now hearing about, okay, this is going to be a social enterprise that they can also support outside of just the initial investment. They're going to be kind of connected to us for 4 years. So they're really in tune with asking questions and learning about what we're doing and seeing the progress. And now also, because with ACBN being in jeopardy of losing core funding, that pit in my stomach of relying on grants, we're able to actually shift that to relying on our own, our own acumen. It's like we can now control a business that's going to be able to generate revenue to keep us sustainable. That actually gives us more pride, and the people that are seeing us not just begging for grants, but actually working on a business and using investment as the way to fund it, I can see people talk to us different. You're not just talking to us kind of from a victim mentality where, oh, please grant us, to help us stay alive. It's like, no, we're going to invest and build something that can be for the long term.
Thinking even to your early journey, Emily, when you started thinking about or deciding to do something in the impact investment space, we know that Goparity Canada came from I believe, a Portuguese platform. So can you tell us a little bit about your own journey, what it looked like for you and your platform here in terms of seeking investment and launching the platform to Canadians?
Yeah, definitely. I would love to. My journey actually started back in my undergrad at Western University in London. I was really just starting my own personal investing journey, wanting to invest aligned according with my values. And so within that journey, I was kind of investing in things like I remember one of my first sustainable investments was a BMO Clean Fund. And upon further research and digging, I realized that about 30% of that investment was in this clean fund was actually in fossil fuels. So I felt like there was this huge aspect of transparency missing from the space. And the more I started to learn about these kind of clean, sustainable, green funds, I realized, well, that's not like my definition of clean, sustainable, and green. So this concept of impact investing came along, and I was really drawn to it because it puts transparency first. So it's a measurement, not a label, and you actually get to see the impact that your investment is creating. It's all done through storytelling as well. That's a huge part of talking about social impact. And so I loved that aspect of it as well. And when I kind of went home that day and said, I'm going to make my first impact investment. And sure enough, it wasn't accessible to me because it's only for about the top 1% to 2% of Canadians accredited investors. So there's so many people that don't fit in that bucket and couldn't access, real transparent impact investments. So myself and a couple of my peers sought out to discover why this was the case in Canadian investments. And on that journey, it was kind of the year of, it was 2020. And so things had, of course, shut down. Our immediate community was not as accessible as it once was. So we started to really look on a global scale, and we connected with Goparity Europe. So company had office in Lisbon, Portugal, and they were providing investments to Europeans for just €5 and impact investments where you could see the transparency. We were like, this is exactly what we need in Canada. And so we, upon many conversations, realized that we had a totally aligned vision for the finance landscape, and our goals were the same. And so we established our partnership officially in 2021 and decided to launch Goparity into Canada. And that was a very long process, much longer than myself and my two other Canadian co-founders expected, because we were working with provincial securities regulators for about 2 years to get our license. And we obtained that license in 2023 and now launched just over a year ago. So that's the journey that's brought us to this place. And we really wouldn't have been able to bring impact investing, accessible impact investing to Canada if it wasn't for Goparity. And we're just so lucky to be a part of this bigger vision. And yeah, this amazing organization that's helping us make our dreams come true, really.
And a huge milestone. Congratulations to you. I know that was a long time coming, but hitting that milestone in 2023 really opened up massive opportunity. And for founders like yourself, Ryan, and even thinking about your journey when you launching the organization and seeking other types of investment, you did mention government grants. Had you looked at other types of investment, be it dilutive through grants or angel investment? or any other kind of involvement from the investor side, sort of either regular day-to-day or in mentoring? And in your journey of the crowdfunding, how would you say that the Goparity team helps you to be on track for your funding goals? So sort of a double question in there.
Yeah, and we hadn't really investigated a lot of different options, mainly because we're a nonprofit. So looking at investment dollars for equity or angel investment or VC investment wasn't really on the radar, because we were trying to figure out, since we're a nonprofit, how are we first going to acquire this social enterprise, and then how are we going to fund it? So the bank was kind of the first option, or we're going to try to figure out, hey, how to get a grant to get the money to acquire it, which, as we investigated, was not going to be a viable option either. So yeah, we didn't see a lot of alternatives to just traditional debt through a bank. And being a nonprofit, that's where they usually don't lend to nonprofits. So having the conversation, even though we've been with certain banks and credit unions for a while, it was still a difficult conversation because they weren't really sure how to broach it. So yeah, we didn't see a lot of different options because we're a nonprofit.
Okay. And then talking a little bit about your work now with Goparity, how are they supporting you in being on track for your fundraising goals?
Well, that's where the awareness has been so key, being able to do the initial webinar. We're working on kind of a fundraising day / anniversary event in person for ACBN, so that we can talk about, where the next stage of our journey goes and us raising dollars through the Goparity platform. So we haven't been able to do a lot of in-person events or like networking events just personally for ACBN. Usually it's part of like the broader ecosystem or other people's events. So that's where the encouragement from Goparity's team to really be focused on ACBN and getting the word out and inviting people even to our office so that they can see what we do. I guess you always just focus doing the work and you don't realize you actually have to talk about it and get the word out. So that kind of guidance has been great. And then again, being able to shift the conversation to one of investment and long-term strategy, because we're taking over a franchise, the Just Like Family home care franchise. Now we're going to be able to be in that conversation about senior care. So we have to start talking more to our community. And this has been a great platform to kind of amplify that and get the kick in the butt, to get our word out.
And so often we think of growth and success in terms of the number, right? The actual funds raised. It sounds to me like you figured out that however often you talk about it, you're drawing more and more people who are interested in the project towards you, and then they might then in contribute to the fund itself. So Emily, this is a podcast called Idea to Investment, so it's often talking about the investment, which usually comes down to the numbers. But talk to us about ways that Goparity measures success beyond just raising funds, and are there specific metrics or stories that really showcase the impact of your platform on the supported businesses, and in particular, since you hit that milestone in 2023?
Yeah, that's a great question, because for us, there's so many different, I guess, like key performance indicators that we look at. But when you talk about impact, you can't just talk about it in this quantitative sense. It goes so much beyond that. And I think one of my favorite things that we do at Goparity to talk about and keep circling back to different projects when we're looking at the impact that they've created is something called transparency tales. So transparency tales are when we highlight a specific story within a project, within an organization, a story that people can relate to, empathize with, and we can use that to take action. So there's two that come to mind, and one we actually recently put out with someone from the Just Like Family franchise that ACBN is acquiring. And we at Goparity, two of us interviewed one of the caregivers there, and we got the chance to tell her story. And she recollected this beautiful story about a senior who had arthritis and wasn't able to cook anymore. And within that story, the caregiver stepped in and was able to cook with the senior and help them, make meals for their family. They're once again having family gatherings, providing food to the people in the community, other seniors. And so it was just this really lovely and heartwarming story that we were able to share. And a piece of feedback that I got that has nothing to do with investment dollars or people coming in to the Goparity community or anything like that, but was that someone heard that story and they said, my grandmother has arthritis, and this has really motivated me to go and cook with her and learn some of her most important recipes. Um, and I'm like really excited to share this experience with her because of course she would love that. And so that kind of impact is something that you would never, like, I would never have expected that to come from that story, but it's just so beautiful. And it really does show that spreading positivity is such a powerful tool and can really affect people beyond just the ways that you're imagining it to. So beyond just the ways of getting financing towards this amazing organization that's gonna have these great impacts, but yeah, even within people's lives, it's telling a beautiful story. And the other way that we do transparency tales, so for this, it was of course to promote the project, raise awareness about the project that we're currently financing. But we've also circled back to organizations. So earlier this year, we financed a family-run oyster farm in Nova Scotia, and we provided them with the funding to purchase 500,000 oyster seeds that they would then put into their farm in the ocean and grow and then sell a year or two down the road. And so once they actually got the financing from us, they had sent these pictures and videos of they had gotten the whole community together. They'd finally purchased the oysters. It was a big community event. They'd gotten the community together, and they were doing the work of putting these oysters into the ocean, and just having their whole family there, sending us pictures and videos, and a big thank you to their community of investors who supported it and allowed it to happen. That was also a very like feel good moment, and all those investors who invested in that project got to see that story with all those beautiful photos from the farm.
I love it, the power of storytelling. I mean, talking about the oysters and being able to share the journey of that. But for you, Ryan, it's really clear to me why ACBN is looking at acquiring a franchise, because of the extent of the ways that you can have impact in community outside of what was the main priority of ACBN, and then really looking at how else can you have impact. It's quite extraordinary. I'm so grateful that both of you have shared those stories. For you, Ryan, really specifically, what looking back on this funding journey, what advice would you give to other businesses considering alternative funding sources like crowdfunding over traditional investments?
Yeah, definitely leaning into that education piece, because a lot of times crowdfunding is like a Kickstarter, Indiegogo, or GoFundMe, as I mentioned. So knowing that there's other types where there's crowd equity and now crowd lending, these are things that you have to educate your own network to say like, hey, this is the type of crowdfunding that we're doing. But if you just hear it, you might think GoFundMe. So you have to kind of catch their initial instinct to make sure that you like control the narrative, like control your own story and the way that you're the type of funding that you're using. So that's something that we've definitely learned that I would think we would do ahead of time, maybe more like a newsletter about crowdfunding, so that our network understands like, oh, this exists, and now we're going to be engaging with it for our platform. So that I would definitely give that kind of advice for anybody that's getting into this space in the future.
Well, and the immediate thought will be Goparity instead.
Yeah, change the whole stereotype. Yeah.
So what's next on the horizon for you, Ryan?
Well, we are somewhat we're the territory that we're taking over, we're overseeing it. So we've been seeing it grow from about 19,000 per month Now we got it to close to 30,000. So being able to complete this investment, we'll be able to pay off the rest of the franchise fee, have some dollars for marketing. So our focus is really building out this business division because, again, like I said, relying on grants and knowing that that's not 100% guaranteed. We have a target in mind of about 60,000 per month in this social franchise, that if we hit that, it'll actually cover all of our operating costs for the month. So that is a goal that I feel our team is really excited about. Again, hey, grants are there. We'll definitely write when we need to if anything pops up, but we won't have to rely on it every month or every year trying to think of, oh, how do we just get another one to keep things going and not have to fire anybody. Having this as the core funding and really being in control of it. And then what it sparked is that conversation in our community about so many entrepreneurs that are taking care of their parents. Because as we took over the franchise, we're like putting out surveys, say, hey, is there anybody in the network that is in this position? And 150 people responded saying like they're taking care.
Wow.
And it was a question that we weren't even asking. So now an entrepreneur is trying to run their business, struggling, but we don't know why. And now we're finally able to kind of peel back the layers on the personal side of what people go through. And this is a conversation that's only going to keep growing as more seniors or more seniors are aging.
Okay. Well, what I like about the model is you've got the recurring revenue through the acquisition, and it helps you to continue to prioritize through the network entrepreneurs who are launching incredible businesses and taking care of those priorities that sometimes take them away from their focus. So it feels like the duality of that is quite strong and very compelling. For you, Emily, what's on your near horizon?
Well, our next big step is going to be trying to finance a lot more projects than we've done before. So I mentioned that we launched in 2023. We received our license and launched. And so we've been just over a year in the market. And throughout that year, we were taking the time to kind of learn the ins and outs of the model, get as much feedback as we can, and still getting feedback along the way, of course, like Ryan's piece about educating borrowers, communities about what is crowdfunding. That's a huge thing that we'll take forward with us and continue to do. But now is really the time that we want to be growing the number of projects, number of businesses that we're working with, and the amount of investment that's being put into the sustainable development goals. So growth is definitely on the horizon, and we also have a real interest in looking into serving more rural communities, marginalized and underserved communities. So a really cool thing about Goparity's model is we do operate remotely and across Canada. So we have a really interesting opportunity to help some of those more remote communities where they're, not tied to a very central place. They have their own unique funding challenges. So we've been doing a lot of learning and still continue to about the unique challenges that they face in getting financing, and especially goes for remote Indigenous communities. And that's where we want to put our focus, and we think that Goparity can be the solution that these communities are needing and get some more financing into local small businesses there.
I love it. It's highly inspirational. And when you think of companies at scale and where you are now and the potential of where you'll be, it sounds to me like you're on the right track. So maybe one final question then, Emily, before we close out. We like to end our episodes with asking the founder if they had a chance to go back in time and give their younger selves a piece of advice. What would you tell yourself? We'll start with you, Emily, and then Ryan, you're up next.
It's a tough one. I think myself and my co-founders have all talked about it, and we'd kind of said if we had set our expectations a little more realistically from the beginning, we wouldn't be where we are now. It was our total optimism that really carried us through, especially that first 2 years of not being able to be operational, working with securities regulators, constantly having money going towards legal fees and absolutely no business operations, that was very tough. But we also went in with the expectation that it would be months, not years. And so if I had, told myself back then, here's some realistic expectations, I don't know if I if I would have done it or seen it as feasible. So I think the best thing is, keeping that total optimism that founders have, and also looking at things really one step at a time. There was definitely times in my journey where I felt completely overwhelmed looking at where I was and where I wanted to be. And it can be a debilitating feeling like being that overwhelmed. So once I really learned to take things one step at a time, and you're not going to get to, that end goal unless you get to the next step and take the next step. What does that look like? Success comes when you reach your next step, and you have to celebrate those successes and milestones along the way, not when you get to where you could be in 5 to 10 years from now. That is a very motivating and good feeling.
Love that.
Wow. Great lesson. How about you, Ryan?
Yeah, one thing that has become my mantra in recent days is there's no way forward without collaboration. And I remember my dad always telling me when I was thinking to start my business, he's like, get a co-founder. You need somebody else that works with you. And so recently we were part of the Black Entrepreneurship Ecosystem Conference, and I got to meet Emily in person. Thanks so much for coming. And the conversation there is, how do we work together? So if I was go back in time, it's like, how do I foster collaboration as early as possible? Because it helped with my business. And then it helped with when we initially started ACBN with having 7 co-founders. So every time that we bring in more minds and more expertise, things just grow so much faster. And if I had started ACBN by myself, I know 7 years later, we wouldn't be at this point. It probably would have closed, because there's moments when the team uplifts you when you're feeling lower. So really, and then using technology to foster that collaboration, because I love LinkedIn. I love ways that capture people's information so that you can keep in touch. I think early on, I wasn't doing that. So a lot of contacts and people that I met, they just kind of filter away or flow away because you don't have a way to keep in touch. I would really structure a way to foster collaboration and keep in touch with contacts.
When we think of the most promising startups and the fastest growing technology companies, we often hear the same, and it's so much embedded in the DNA at Tech Alliance of like, you'll go an awful lot further with collaboration. You might go a little bit slower in the beginning, but the outcome is so wonderful and necessary. So I want to offer my thanks to both of you, Emily and Ryan, for joining us today. Idea to Investment is sponsored by TD Ferrera Wealth Advisory Group and is brought to you by Tech Alliance of Southwestern Ontario. If you'd like to know more about Tech Alliance and the resources available to entrepreneurs and startups, go to techalliance.ca. My name is Christina Fotz. Thank you for joining me.